Welcome to Space Erased, the NASA Fraudcast. I'm your host, Chris Carlisle, and glad to be back, everybody, for an all-new Season 2. If you were watching last season, you might notice a few things have changed around here, starting with our cool new studio and some high-definition graphics, which I think will really spruce this program up here. So a lot of cool things to get excited about this season. Another thing I'm really excited about is I've got a co-host now going through the season with me. That would be my fiance, Miss Rachel Sinclair. A lot of you guys knew her from the last season and were asking, how she's doing and if she'll ever be back on the program. So back by popular demand, she'll be coming up in just one moment here with the news. So to kick off things in Season 2 here, we'll be doing a two-part episode called Is the Earth Flat? Part 1 and 2. The first episode will be kind of like a macro overview of the entire, let's call it the grand conspiracy. And some would even say that includes the flat Earth. So we're going to be putting that in there and talking about like all the big things out there in the conspiracy world. And then the following episode will be specifically on the finer details of the flat Earth. So if we don't get to it here in the first episode, we'll definitely get to it in the second there. So a lot of cool stuff to look forward to. We'd love to hear your guys' input along the way. So without further ado, let's get things going into the news here with Miss Rachel Sinclair. Rachel?
Thanks, Chris. Today, October 11th, 2016, President Obama spoke to CNN outlining the administration's vision of our future space program. Much of what he said was very similar to his State of the Union address in 2015 when he said, "We have set a clear goal vital to the next chapter of America's story in space, sending humans to Mars by the 2030s and returning them safely to Earth, with the ultimate ambition to one day remain there for an extended time." Later on this week, many of the nation's brightest innovators will be gathering at the White House Frontiers Conference in Pittsburgh. The topic of discussion will be how American investments in science and technology will one day help us colonize and thrive in space, the final frontier. NASA has been encouraged by this administration to work both independently and in conjunction with tech companies that can help us achieve these lofty goals by the 2030s. So what does all this mean? Well, to us here at Space Erased, it appears as if the Obama administration and NASA are teamed up for their next big deception. This whole situation seems very reminiscent of May 1961, when Kennedy proposed we send man to the moon, and then commissioned what eventually became the Apollo space program. What they ended up doing there was they made a pretty big deal out of the idea publicly, employing tens of thousands of Americans. So when they eventually hoaxed the moon landing, the highly involved public bought the ruse hook, line, and sinker. In fact, we laugh here all of the time when people defend the validity of the space program solely based on the fact that one of their relatives worked on some small, compartmentalized piece of the project. Nobody questions whether or not people worked on Apollo. We question the glaring red flags we have discovered in the official NASA photos and footage. So that pretty well concludes the news update. The important takeaway here is get ready because the powers that be will eventually hoax this generation all over again. And that concludes today's SENF news.
All right, now for the main subject of tonight's episode. First off, let's start with a question. Is the Earth actually flat and not round like a ball? Well, there seems to be two major ideas when it comes to the possible shape of the Earth. When I first started my research, I started looking around and finding articles that suggest the Earth may look less like a ball and more like a toy spinning top. Now, the top of this top supposedly looks like a flat disc, and the bottom tapers down to a point, much like the toy does. And from everything I've read on the subject, apparently the shape is valuable because it keeps the planet, in this theory, from wobbling or tilting out of its proper position. So that's the first shape. The second shape, and probably most popular of the two, is the flat disc shape. Now, the surface is the same as the globe model, but represented slightly differently. In this model, the center of the disk is the North Pole, and the outer edge of the disk would be the South Pole, or Antarctica. Now, I know, especially if this is a new subject for some of you, I know the image brought to mind is kind of a stupid one where the water's all falling off the edge and the ships are all going with the water off the edge of the earth into this endless abyss. This is the way we, at least here in the United States, the way that we've been programmed to think. We have been brainwashed by our media and our education system since early childhood. But there could definitely be another layout that actually makes sense, that would make this whole flat Earth idea make sense. In fact, most flat earthers today see the Antarctic ice wall as being a logical barrier that would hold the ocean water in, and it would do so by completely surrounding the Earth. And in some places I've seen, or at least I've heard, that the ice wall can reach up to like a mile or 2 miles high. So this is a pretty substantial wall. Now, the last characteristic of the flat Earth model is kind of the most controversial one. This is the idea that there's possibly a gigantic dome over our heads above the Earth called the firmament. It seems to me that believers of the Bible typically argue this point as being fact, as the scriptures do mention a firmament that separates us from the waters above and below. Some even believe space doesn't exist and that it's just more water above us. Others believe that the dome separates us from outer space, and there are even rumors out there that the Russians and the Americans found out about this dome shortly after World War II. This is kind of interesting because they immediately, after finding out, began shooting their largest nukes, mind you, much larger than the ones that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. They started shooting their largest nukes straight up in the air in an apparent attempt to break through the dome. Now, at this point, I may have lost a few of you. Some of you might just be sitting there thinking, this is absurd, this is a total joke, because NASA has totally gone to space, and so has China and India, the UK, Japan, Russia, and all of those space programs are up there most likely taking pictures. They have satellites and probes out there. Surely one of them's taken a good picture of the whole Earth, right? Well, maybe not. Turns out there's really only one picture of the entire Earth that's commonly used that, you run into in science textbooks and things of that nature. And that photo originates from one of the old Apollo missions in the 70s. Yet we still see that same picture in magazines every day, in TV shows, movies, science textbooks, like I said. NASA also has some really colorful high-definition digital Earth pictures that are very new. In fact, I just saw a report on one on CNN a few months ago. The thing that's important here to stress is that these are not real pictures. These are what's called composite images. So supposedly they have different satellites going around the Earth collecting different information. One takes a picture in stripes around the Earth as it passes. One is looking at like cloud information, and another one is looking at like sea levels and things like that. So they take all this information, put it together in something like a program like Photoshop, and they literally have to create a picture out of that information. This is not a photograph, and that's the number one thing. But they tell you, they told us on CNN that they leave out that very important fact. It's like, oh, here's a new picture of the Earth, and they just leave it like that. It says here too, the gentleman, there's a video on YouTube that I highly recommend you checking out. If you look at, there's no pictures of the Earth on YouTube, you'll find a bunch of videos, and this guy is in just about every single one of them. It's a gentleman that works for NASA. It's his job to composite these images and take this information and put it into, and turn it into a picture of the Earth. And he says it is photoshopped. It has to be. That's his quote. And it's very revealing. They're not even, I think if people were really paying attention, NASA's not even trying to hide the fact that these aren't real photographs.
The tricky part here was the weather.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it was a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
So why can't we get real photographs? That's the real question. So now that we've established that there are no real photos of the entire Earth, or at least very few, if there are any at all, it kind of begs the question, why not just send a probe up there and take a few pictures? Also, maybe take a 360-degree shot that shows us, the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, so we can kind of confirm their orientation relative to each other. They have never done that. Or if they have, they haven't told us. That would absolutely shut all of us conspiracy theorists completely up. And you could totally justify the expenditure by saying it's for educational purposes. So no gripes about not having enough money in the budget to do something like that. They could pawn it off as being an educational kind of expense. If they're so confident that we live on a ball spinning super fast, traveling millions of miles an hour through space while orbiting our sun at a crazy speed, then why not just take a few simple panoramic videos or photos and just prove it to us? Doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but for some reason it is. All right, so why do we believe the Earth is round? None of us have ever gone up there for ourselves to experience this. Here in America, children from a very young age grow up seeing globes and maps pretty much in every classroom they're in. By the time we're adults, the idea is so ingrained into our thinking and worldview that we pretty much laugh at the thought of a flat Earth. We're also fed stories of Christopher Columbus discovering the world was round on his trip to the New World. That teamed up with cartoons, comic books, movies, everything else in the media further shamed that idea of the flat Earth. So that's why when somebody says that to you, you laugh instinctually. It's because of programming. It's nature versus nurture. You've definitely been nurtured to think the idea of a flat Earth is crazy. Because honestly, if you use your two eyes, that might be the best proof for anybody, because you can pretty much look, if you get yourself in a position where you can see a long distance and you can see the horizon, it's very flat. Doesn't matter from what position you're at. I've never seen the curvature of the Earth, so you get on mountains and everything and you just can't see it. It always appears flat. So they further shame the idea by putting, in cartoons and movies and things like that, by lumping it in with fairy tales like sea monsters and dragons and fairies and stuff. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of the education system mind control thing here is geography. A lot of you might think you did well in geography in school, and you might think you know a lot about it, but turns out you might not. Turns out the size relationships of the different countries on the map are drastically distorted, enlarged, and reduced in size. The powers that be have done this, and this is a theory, but it seems like a pretty good one. The powers that be have done this to promote a subtle racist agenda. And let me go ahead and explain that. Basically, what they're doing is they're showing the powerful white or fair-skinned countries up on top, and the brown and black countries on the bottom. And it's like a subtle power thing. It's very subtle, but it's very powerful because it did ingrain subtle racist ideas in people for many, many years. Don't take my word for it. They're actually, I never recommend people go watch Oprah, but honestly, there is one episode from back, it looks like in the 90s or something like that. There's an older woman. She was a school teacher at one point. She's on there explaining how the map is wrong, and she kind of tears the map apart and shows you how it actually should look if it was represented correctly. So the reality here is that what we've been taught is false. So definitely go check out that video and educate yourself. There's also some cool infographic videos. I think one's by BuzzFeed or something like that, if I remember correctly. It's also cool. If you type in the size of the countries are wrong or something like that in YouTube, a ton of information shows up, so that's very cool. All right, let's talk about gatekeepers. So who's behind this deception? Well, it's hard to say for sure, but the super wealthy do seem to have some kind of connection. There seems to be a real effort on their part to redistribute the world's wealth into fewer and fewer hands these days. As we all know, information is power, and these people love power and control. The rich are also often associated with secret societies, which, as their name suggests, these people also love secrets. And they're good at keeping them, mind you. And this would be the juiciest, biggest secret of all time if they knew the Earth was flat and the rest of us didn't. Now, I'm not talking about the rich guy at the end of the block in your neighborhood. I'm talking about, we're talking about a number that's reserved to probably like 20 families or so in the entire world. So, I mean, these are the rich families I'm talking about, the super, super wealthy. Now, another group that might have something to do with this would be the world governments out there. The truth here is that the wealthy could also be the silent hands who control the actions of these world governments, the various ones around the world. But for the sake of argument, we'll include governments as a separate point. Over the last few decades, one can easily see that there has been a large effort to combine countries into unions, and it's very likely that these unions in the near future may eventually be combined as well into a one-world government. This is a dream for some, but this is a terrifying fear for others, and I think I would fall into the second category there. Keeping the flat Earth a secret may somehow be beneficial for them in their attempts for world domination. All right, so the last group of people that might have something to do with holding this information back is the military-industrial complex. It's no secret that the military thrives on suppressing information and expanding its forces and power. If they knew, which if this was true, that that they would know by now. If they knew, they would never share that information for fear of, they blame it on mass panic, public chaos. They think we would totally lose it if we learned a little bit of truth in our daily lives. And I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's fair either. I think people would be able to handle this information, and it might take a little bit of time to get used to, but I don't think it's that crazy. I think it's time to wake up. I think we all need to wake up. The military has been hijacked. This is not the military that my father or your father served in, or our grandfathers, for example. This is a very new military. This is the one that Eisenhower warned us about. He said, beware of the military-industrial complex, because what's happening is this thing's becoming bigger and bigger, and it's now private businesses and corporations are getting involved with it, which means it's going to be run like a business. And businesses always have to show some kind of profit. They need to always demonstrate that they're growing. So what does that mean in terms for the military? That means that there always needs to be perpetual war so that they can continue to grow. Without war, without a bad guy, there is no military, and they can't have that. So what's their ultimate plan? And this would be any of the three aforementioned groups here. What's their ultimate plan? Again, it's hard to say, but the reality of the flat Earth may just be one small detail in the big picture. And by pulling at these threads, who knows, maybe all of us together can get this huge conspiracy to unravel like a cheap sweater. And that's what I'm looking to do. They're not just lying about the shape of the Earth. I think there's a good chance that we've been lied to about everything. Space, ancient history, human origin, all of it. And I think I can prove it. If you look at shows like Ancient Aliens and things like that, you can see a real attempt these guys are making to rewriting our history. And I think it's an important goal of theirs to rewrite aliens into our history so that they can eventually, convince us when they fake their alien invasion that this is a real thing happening to us. If we believed they were here at one point before, it would be much easier to accept them as a reality now. So I think that's the plan. Honestly, I'd be lying if I said I knew everything about their whole master plan, or even if there is one at all. We always have to reserve that possibility. But the entire purpose of Space Erased is to link minds with smart people like you, and to hopefully answer this question the answer lies between all of us. A wise person once told me that we all have a piece of the puzzle, and together we have the whole picture. But you'll never understand that whole picture unless you share your piece with others and they share theirs with you. And where do you do something like this? I don't know. So we've created a place for that to happen. You can converse in our comment section here, on our Facebook page, Twitter. We're starting to grow a nice social aspect behind this program that allows all of us to communicate with each other. So if you see something that we do here in the show and you're like, oh man, I got to get this to these guys, there's about 8 ways to reach us on all this. So as the series progresses, we hope you guys will just load up the comment sections under these videos with your thoughts, theories, and questions so that together we can figure this out. So I think that pretty well covers the core content for tonight. Like I said, in the following episode, we'll go into the second part of the flat earth theory, where we'll speak very specifically about the flat earth. And I'll give you a few examples, things that are very difficult to forget. You know, if you see certain realities, it's hard to unsee them. So I'm going to do my best to get all the best information I possibly can to represent this theory, and I'll get it all in the second episode there. So let's see. We're running low on time. Let's move into the Q&A segment of the show here. So yeah, let's see that sexy Q&A graphic. All right, well, let's take a look at a few questions here. The first one comes from Anders Ace. I think that's how you say it. It says, "We are glad to see you back," smiley face. Awesome. Well, glad to be back. I don't know. I definitely enjoy doing the show, and it's a huge pleasure to do it every week here for you guys. The next one comes from Tet's Truth Tube. It says, "Good episode," smiley face. Thanks, Tet's Truth Tube. Next one comes from ag.hem. HEM. It says, "This dude is a very smart individual. We need more people like him to get together and start a program, campaign, or something to tell all 7 billion people the real truth." Man, that sounds like a tall order, but I'd be glad to take it on. I don't know. You guys just got to keep spreading that word, and we'll do it. I'm down for the challenge. Let's see. The next one's from Trey Markdose9. Says, "Just today, some dinosaur kid show I came across flipping through the channels. They were teaching evolution to kids." Oh man, that's not cool. Brainwashing at its best. Dinosaurs teaching evolution to kids. Gotta like that. I don't know. I'm not like I won't like go huge on either side, either creationism or evolutionism. When it comes to children, I think like even religion is something that should be taught to children when they're adults, and they have the ability to reason and think for themselves. I just think indoctrinating kids at a young age with anything is kind of, I don't know, it's selfish on the part of the parent, I think. And I may change my mind when I have my own kids, so I'm sure I will. Who knows? Next one comes from 00SI22 Civic. It says, "New sub. Let's see. Nice to see your reply to fans." Oh, yeah, definitely. This whole show, the big part B to the whole show here, the side quest, if you will, is to get a dialogue going with you guys. I want to get as many brains together as possible. I want to create a think tank on the internet, and eventually we should be able to come up with some crazy stuff together, especially in the conspiracy world. The next one is Vanessa Mariah. She says, "Have you done a show on the Mandela effect yet? Also, please make a video about Earth being holographic instead of just flat. Thanks." Yeah, I don't know, the Mandela effect, I think I mentioned it in one episode. It's a crazy conspiracy where it's two groups of people out there. One group of people thinks they're positive if you ask them that Nelson Mandela died in like 1984, let's say, for example, or something like that. It was a while ago. It was like a while ago in like the 80s or something like that. And the second group of people I would have to fall in, they remember it happened in like, I think it was like 2004 or something like that, or it was in the 2000s. You ask both groups and they're both adamant that they are correct on either side. So that's the Mandela effect. And they say it like applies to other things being true as well. Like 9/11 or the Columbia disaster we've heard being referenced to the Mandela effect. And then holographic Earth, I just have to do some more research. I'm not quite sure about that. I haven't looked into that one yet. So if you have any cool material, definitely share that, and I'd be glad to take a look. All right, let's see. The next one is, Jackass Bauer 1 says, "He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past." George Orwell, 1984. Sorry, I'm moving screens around here. But yeah, no, on the dinosaur episode, I kept using that quote, and then I was like, I could not think of where it came from. And I asked, and I think a few people came back to me with this answer. So 1984, sweet. I love that book. It's a cool movie too, but I think the book was better. Appreciate the comment, Jackass Power 1. Totally the cliche. I liked the movie, but the book was better. Adrian Wilkinson says, fantastic presentation. Love the facts coming out. Please keep up your fantastic work. Yeah, I don't know. I'm working as hard as I can here. It's a very small staff of just me and pretty much my co-host here. So we would love all the help we can get from you guys. It'd be much appreciated. And thank you for the comment. The Afterlife Now says, this chick's commented on a couple of our episodes, I think even going way back. So we definitely appreciate you still watching after all this time. Thanks for sticking with us. It says Lost in Space, ? Glad you made it back. Yeah, and then transitional fossils equal don't exist. I agree. That's a good point. And then good job, guys, smiley face. Thank you for the comment. And so awesome to see people returning after all this time. So very cool. Thanks for sticking with us. Mike Davino says, thanks. No problem, Mike. Patricia, sweet. Well, this would be my last comment here. Patricia says, Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes is the name of the channel. She's awesome, really cool podcast. I think pretty much every day she drops one, so hats off to you. I wish I could put them out that fast, but no, great channel and a really, really great resource. She says, I'm glad to see you're back. Shared, smiley face. We really appreciate that. Thank you. We always really appreciate shares and stuff like that. Anytime you guys can get the word out, hugely appreciated. And she speaks to a lot of people, so that's definitely nice of her. So yeah, I think that'll take care of it for the Q&A today, and that should take care of it for the episode as well. So on behalf of both myself and Rachel, we both really appreciate you stopping by and taking some time to watch our show, and we hope you enjoyed it. So we'll catch you all next week. Take care. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to keep up with us in between episodes, feel free to follow us on Twitter at NASA_Fraudcast. Again, our handle is at NASA_Fraudcast. It's a great way to see what kinds of episodes are coming up, or to contribute an idea of your own to see in a future episode. Another great place to do that is our Facebook page. Feel free to stop by and like our page. It's called Space Erased, the NASA Fraudcast. Again, we'd love it if you'd like our page called Space Erased, the NASA Fraudcast. Now, too, there's a lot of times where people want to send us like sensitive documents and information like that as it pertains to certain topics we're researching. That's awesome. But sometimes you don't want to leave that in the comment section, and we understand that as well. We have an email address in that case there. It's called nasafraudcast@gmail.com. Again, you can email us your documents and things like that. nasafraudcast@gmail.com. The last thing here is a lot of times people just ask us what's the best way to help you guys grow. How can I help? The best and easiest and free way is like our video and hit that subscribe button under the video as well. Each like helps us, and each subscription is massively helpful to us, and we really appreciate it. Plus, when you subscribe, you're the first one to know when we drop a new episode, and it's a great way to keep up with the show. That about does it for us tonight. We thank you again for watching, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks.